Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Vision radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Thank you for joining me today. Today is October 28th. We're almost finished with 2016. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's Friday, Call-In Fridays. I do have my good friend, who I now consider a good friend, Dana Durnford, on with me.
Hi, Lonnie.
Hi, Dana. I've never met you personally, but you know what? I love you.
We talk. Yeah, I'm sitting here.
Me
too. No,
and I'm really grateful that you and I picked up this mantle where other people are really just too afraid of it, because you and I are really literally the voice of reason in a world that's being pivoted forward by fear. It's fear-mongering at its, even the latest thing that's going on here in the States, you know, you knew they'd do this. Donald Trump was losing by a wide margin, and now it's getting closer, and there's all this fear, and the tries, like, this fear-mongering is like, you can see the what do you call, the rabies, the foaming at the mouth. It's undeniable. So, and yet,
thanks, media.
Everybody ignores the elephant in the room, which is our environment has been killed by the nuclear industry. Period. And the chemical industry. Before we came on the air, I was sharing with you this book that I bought. It was an old used book in 2008 called The Coming Insurrection, and it was written by the Invisible Committee, and it was published by MIT, which means it was somebody. One of the lines in this that says, this is very interesting, and we'll talk about this. It says, everything about the environmentalist discourse must be turned upside down. Where they talk of catastrophes to label the present system's mismanagement of beings and things, we see only the catastrophe of its all too perfect operation. Wow. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's
exactly
arrogance.
Where we're at right now, you know?
That's real arrogance, yeah.
You know?
Well, most people don't, like, there's a lot going on all the time. The elections, they're going to dominate every 4 years for a couple of months straight, and then leading up to it, they'll kind of dominate everything out there. And if you want advertisement, if you want people to come to your site, if you want this, you want that, you got to get into that game. But it is a game.
They do it for 2 years here.
It's a distraction.
Who did I saw? I saw some movie star on television, actually on Fox News, saying we have got to shorten the election cycle in the United States because right now we do this for 2 years. And there's a new study that proves that it doesn't do anything. It sways nobody's opinion to cover it for 2 years. All it does is make lobbyists a lot of money, the television stations a lot of money, and really nothing. It affects no real net result. So it is just, again,
fill the airwaves, yeah.
We're assets on a balance sheet.
Well, you're not supposed to be political, but then they fill the airwaves with nothing but political diatribes and conjectures and everything else, yeah?
Well, that isn't that the I called the Joyce Meyer Ministry when I found out about St. Louis, because the Joyce Meyer Ministry is a multi-million-dollar ministry in St. Louis. And when I found out about the catastrophe, a burning nuclear waste dump site right next to the airport. I mean, how much worse can you get? Helen Caldecott said the place should be evacuated. I called them, and you know what they said? Well, we don't get involved in politics. And I said, ma'am, this is not politics. We're talking human health. They're like, well, we
Yeah,
can't.
desensitized, right?
They're,
They know what they're doing, where they're to, and a lot of people don't. I get it where a lot of people they have a trigger response, but it's not a proper response, and it's not a thought out response, and they kind of gravitate to a lot of those jobs anyway. And if you go up the ladder, you'll find it's more pronounced, where they're more well compartmentalized is a good word. Where most people are like that, they don't see the rest of the insects or the birds. You don't see that only as a nuisance. You don't see it as the ecosystem. And these are all capable of flipping and becoming concerned people. They just don't. They live in that world where TV and everything else got them lulled into this sense where everything is dealt with properly and there's all kinds of checks and balances, and they assume naturally that way that everything is going to work itself out. And you can feel overwhelmed, as you know, trying to accomplish anything. And so just getting out there and getting your voice is a big accomplishment on its own, right? And then motivating people is a whole different spectrum. Where most
yeah, motivating them without fear, because that's the thing. It's not a fear-based place, it's a love-based place. If we love this planet, Helen Caldicott's show used to be called If You Love This Planet. I mean, if you love this planet, you're going to speak out. I mean, that's just the bottom line. You're not going to just. I saw a picture on Facebook yesterday with a cat with 4 ears.
Caldecott didn't speak out on Unit 4. You know what I mean, right? So what I'm saying, that people that are in the know and highly educated and very articulating and are, the big shakers and movers, there's no way they missed that. There was no way they could have not known the difference, right? They could have come out and said something about the fake Unit 4 spent fuel pool. But on the top, outside of that, I don't find no faults with her. Outside of, she don't think it's an extinction event for the Pacific Ocean. Now, she might have changed her mind since then, who knows? But she hasn't, all of these, not just Caldecott. I'm not begging on anybody. I'm just saying.
That's all the physicians. Like, I'm having Chuck on with Physicians for Social Responsibility on in the next couple of weeks on a Wednesday. And I told him I really want to discuss this because they are firmly rooted in this idea that Fukushima, the ocean is just too big. And so I've there's over 600 and, they used to report, this is interesting, you probably have noted this also. When they first admitted they were pouring radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean, they said from 3 to 1,000 tons a day. 1,000 tons, and then they said it was 1,000, and now they're saying it's 300,000. So you get what I'm saying?
The numbers were based upon the fire trucks, the volume of the hoses that originally went in there. These are the numbers we're hearing still today is 300 tons. And what it meant was that 600 tons can go through the pumps each day, and that in the wells, you have these wells, what they call a well dug around the site, everybody that's not familiar with this. And what they do is water pools up in these wells when they run out of the reactor buildings, and these are highly fissionable products they ran over. And so then they pump that up and put it in storage tanks, whatever they can manage to get out of the well. But the wells are different places, and they've been adding more wells. But the number was based upon 600 tons went through the pumps, the fire trucks and that, and then 300 tons of that was being sucked up. And now neither one of those was true. They weren't able to suck it up because you had 400 kilometers of the coastline was smashed through a wood chipper, and there was no infrastructure for a long time. And it was about 40 days before they stopped pumping the salt water in there. So the numbers that they're talking about are fable numbers, and the reactors need 1 million gallons a minute to keep cool. And at the fuel pools now, they can go about 120,000 liters a day boil off, but they were smashed to pieces. And they were, as Unit 3 and Unit 4, they were totally destroyed inside of those. Well, Unit 3, there's nothing left. It completely blew it right out of the building. There was a million sievers outside of Unit 2. And so it's just a long draw out every aspect of it. Like, I have 5,000 pictures and I've studied them heavily, trying to understand what I'm looking at. And by and by, and these are from TEPCO's website, and they were listed in certain orders, like interior these places, interior these, exterior these places, north, south, east, west. And so you had to build this picture, and it took a couple of years basically to wrap your mind around everything. Not that you could, but most things. And these were just one of these buildings had 6 reactor cores in it, so it was an event beyond anything imaginable. And the distraction, of course, as you know, was Unit 4, when you had 1, 2, and 3 were completely gone down into the earth itself, melted down. And they have lied about it constantly, consistently, and endlessly, and repetitively with these fables that they're doing something. But all the pictures of the site, I don't see people working on the site.
I also heard somebody, there was some scientists on television saying that this was far less magnitude than Chernobyl,
right?
That the Japanese evacuated their people properly, nobody got killed. I mean, they are sticking
Jerry
with the
Thomas.
story.
Jerry Thomas's word.
No workers got killed. Nothing happened.
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody was fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and you hear that constantly, endlessly in the mainstream media.
Yeah, that's right.
Who know better? Yeah, who know better? And the pictures are easily available for everybody that would disprove everything they're saying, because the buildings are completely destroyed. And then if you look at these reactor buildings, you'll see how many reactor cores they store in the building for 10 years, and that these are actually no different than a reactor core, except it's not running, but it has the same volume. And it has the same ability, without the accident, to go into a chain reaction all on its own. And that's why they store it there for 10 years in water, and it boils off that water for such a long period of time. Then it goes into another pool for another couple of decades before it starts to cool down enough that they can think about moving it somewhere. But if it wasn't in the water and it didn't catch fire, for instance, right away, say you were there in the first few minutes before things went south and the water was gone, well, the burst of neutrons and gamma shine and X-rays would have killed you instantly if you were visually able to, to see something like that. You were too close. If you're within 300 feet of it, on the outside of the building, it'll do the same thing to you. And so that's why all the academics and scientists are not there. They're not there, right? They don't go there in the building or in the facility itself, because the rods were blown all over the facility, and that a single piece of the rods, and we're talking millions and millions and millions of pounds per building, we're talking at least 5 million pounds per building if they can be trusted on the minimum. And so that's many, 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 many Chernobyls. But what made Chernobyl bad was that it, for 10 days, allegedly only, we don't believe this story, but for 10 days only, it was in a chain reaction. And we know 600 helicopter pilots dumping boric acid and lead from helicopters on top of it. All of them died shortly after, all 600. And that in Fukushima, they only kind of attempted it, but they couldn't get close enough to it. And then the water dissipated in the air because they were so high. But it was already all gone. This was symbolic in order for the deception to survive and live. And so they don't have enough money for the Olympics, so is what they're claiming, in say for Tokyo. But the solution for them to save money for some, and why are these? This is the Olympics, but anyway, the solution to save money was to move some of the Olympics in close to the reactors, but on the Fukushima prefecture. Yeah. Now, like as you know, that whole countryside, it was flakes from the detonations. It's kind of like a fuel rod, and it's just it's not safe for any.
Nobody. You know what's going to happen? The athletes are going to go there to prepare, and they're going to die of heart attacks, Dana.
Oh, you're going to see that. Yeah, we see that in the schools a lot down there.
Yes, it's really. So let me ask you this question. Well, let me get the number out first, and then I have a question to ask you. The number, in case anybody wants to call in, is 718-717-8296. I do believe I fixed the plug-in thing so we could take a call. But Dana, I want to ask you this. Are they still using fire trucks? I've been wondering about this one. Do they still use fire trucks to cool down those pools, or have they got the plumbing back going on? I mean, what's the system there now?
Right, you can't do plumbing anywhere. You can't get in. You'll die. You'll stack up dead people, and you'll never get the hose all the way in. And there's nothing to connect
That's
it
what I
to.
thought.
Yeah.
So, what do they use? Are they still using ocean water?
No, they're using fresh water, but it's not supposed. Like when they use salt water, it was all gone when they done something like that. That was just like the molten mass down there, trying to cool it down. That was who knows what that was 100% about, because they know from tests in the 50s and 60s you should never do put
Right,
sulfur on these things.
right. It's the
But
worst.
because of the buckyballs that it creates, yeah, it's the worst thing you could do. They
It
make.
sort of exponentially made it tremendously worse than
Oh
before.
yeah. Well, it's the equivalent. I'll lowball it. It's the equivalent of a nuclear bomb going off every 5 minutes. And I say that because the water is atomized and aerosoled and turned into a fissionable product as you're pouring it in there, because you're talking 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And so this fissionable product that is actually water, which we absorb easily, is being produced. Now, at the same time, you're washing stuff down on top of the melted core, and then that's turned into fissionable product. You're washing stone and rebar and steel and cement, or just gravel or whatever, down on fissionable nuclear core that's in 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. So you're producing way more. It's not like a campfire where people got to add logs onto it all the time. You don't have to do that. This will burn at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit. From what we understand, for it could do it for millions of years, or it could stop on its own with some other, but it's not likely. That's the idea of nuclear fission. Like the sun doesn't stop and start up here and there, thank goodness, right? But a nuclear chain reaction is kind of the same thing. It's not the same thing, but it's kind of the same thing. What we done, we smurfed it up. The sun creates elements, we destroy them and create our own elements. So the sun creates one kind of elements, we create elements similar to it, but it's ionizing, and so it's not familiar to anything in the solar system, and that there's nothing on the planet that has any kind of a natural defense for it. It's recognized as a foreign object by your body and then attacked as a foreign object with white blood cells. It's the same for animals, and the same whatever the defense is for plants. And so everything on the planet fights with it and loses the battle. Of course, all the animal studies, every animal died in every study for 70 years, and that we see how the microscopic world disappears earlier than the insects, but the insects are dependent upon the microscopic world, and so is life itself, bacteria and everything else. We can't exist without that harmony and that diversity, and that's the whole ecosystem dependent upon the bacteria, and everything else lives in harmony with that. Same thing for the ocean, where it's a billion creatures per glass of water. And I'll just mumble on if you don't cut me off. You know that.
Well, I don't want to jump in. I always cut people off. You know what you could do though is turn your mic down a wee bit because it's a little bit louder than me. So I think that it might be a little too
Mic
loud.
check.
Yeah,
Testing. Yeah.
yeah.
Bit better?
I think that's a little bit better. Yeah.
Down lower?
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. I think that might be better for everybody.
I went down a little tiny notch.
I am going to actually be getting a new microphone, so I just figured it out yesterday, so I'll be getting it next week. We'll see if it improves
Sweet.
the sound. Yeah, I hope so. I'm not a very good electronics consumer, so I have to get advice, and I'm all nervous Nelly about doing it.
Everybody goes at it is. You got to go to university, and even then, every technology is different. Every technology got a manual, and every technology got its own patents that you got to work out and figure how to utilize it,
You
et
know,
cetera, et cetera, right?
speaking of university, I actually, I go to the University of Oregon. They just got $15 million from, I think, Ted Knight for their science department. So I Instagrammed them and said, great, now we can have the University of Oregon lead the charge on how to reverse the negative effects of radioactive contamination and figure out a way to stop the Fukushima nuclear volcano that we got going on. People at the university have no idea, Dana.
I have a hard time accepting any institution coming up with solutions anymore, right? I
Well, they
have a
won't
hard
do it.
time.
As you were
Yeah.
speaking, I was thinking to myself, really, how it's almost as if
I'm not going to wait for him anyway.
well, it's almost as if Fukushima was like you read these stories of where a person who's been beating up his wife finally has enough. He shoots the kids, shoots the wife, and shoots himself, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of what, as you were talking about what was going on about Fukushima, I was thinking of, wow, that's exactly what the nuclear industry has done. They shot the kids, they shot the wife, and they've shot themselves. And
They
like
did, yeah.
forcing us to go into Fukushima for the Olympics, which is the most ironic thing, like the pinnacle of athletic achievement. We're going to send them into a place where we are going to give these people catastrophic illnesses and death.
Well, think of the nuclear industry this way, because they've been around for a long time, right? Think of them as, I know this is a bad example, but Walmart. And so if you started up Walmart, which is a really bad example, folks, because Walmart is nothing to covet. But anyway, you started up Walmart. No offense to you, Lonnie. And this was a long time ago. And then anyway, your children took over, and then their children took over, and then their children took over, or the board corporation took over, and then blah blah blah. Okay, so but if you were young when you first went to Walmart and met the original owner, you would have got great service. And then the second owner, you probably would have got decent service. But by the time you got to the corporation, you got shit service, and you got people who were so disconnected from the original foundation. And I know Walmart's a bad example, but anyway, they're so disconnected
Well,
from.
Walmart's actually a good
That's what a
example.
nuclear is. That's what nuclear is. These scientists that we're looking at now, the academics and the media, these are all basically the inbreeds of the inbreeds of the inbreeds.
Mhm.
And way back in the day, these were nasty friggin' people. And then the result is people that are so disconnected, right? There's nothing they can do without causing harm. That's how they live their life.
Well, they've been trained. I mean, they really believe, like they
That's right.
believe in
Desensitized, yeah.
like they really believe that. I've talked to people at the university and scientists where they really believe that that they're handling it, that it's not that bad. I mean, this is why I still adhere to Dr. Caldicott's, advocacy against nuclear, because she at least is speaking out. And, one of the reasons that, I mean, this is the interesting thing, how good people are co-opted by the mega system. Even Chris Busby said this to me, because I asked him, I've been asking him to come on the show. He doesn't want to sound like a lunatic. He's afraid if he comes on any of these shows. Dr. Callicott said, well, she wants scientific proof before she can advocate anything on any of the opinions that we've discussed. She's like, yes, that all sounds really good, and I think intuitively you're right, but I can't say that until we have scientific proof. And when the industry is hiding the proof, or manipulating the facts so that a scientist or a doctor can't see the facts, that keeps them silent, because they don't want to be put into a light of sounding like a conspirator. Do you know what I'm saying? So
I can pick that argument apart on there.
Well, it's a complete manipulation of. This is one of the things that I'm going to talk with Chuck about. Is like Chuck and I have this ongoing argument. When I first met him 3 years ago, he's like, "Oh no, Fukushima is just the ocean's too big." And I said, Chuck, you might have had that argument 4 years ago, 3 years ago, but now we have almost a trillion tons of radioactive, and that's just one. That's Fukushima. We're not even talking about Sellafield, what's been going on. Sellafield in its own right is a horrible catastrophe.
They took people at the theaters to go in there and push the fuel rods out of the reactor because the 5,000 employees wouldn't do it. And so nuclear is, and Sellafield is about 4 million liters a day pouring out of that place into the ocean. They're not storing it and putting it in tanks, they're just letting it go into the ocean. But we have studies, Callicott's just got to look at the pictures and look at how long the plants have been there and knowing that all the fuel was gone. You don't need to be an academic to know stuff like this.
Well,
she's been at it 27 years, and so she got no excuses for not seeing. Well, for starters, all she had to do was look at my site and see an extinction event on the coastline. And just because I speak out about Fukushima and everything else, there's no reason to ignore the documentation. That's actual documentation. It's the last species count on the coastline of British Columbia. I done it. There's nobody else have ever went out and done another species count that we know about. No one has ever broadcasted that out there. There's no papers on it. We are the last expeditions that done the coast of Canada for species. And what we found was the most frightening thing imaginable, the most startling. Who could have thought, right, that this could happen in a 5-year period to such a big, vast ocean? But then again, everything comes over immediately and the jet streams hits the mountains and washes back down to the coastline on top of that. And then you have it liberated from the ocean all the time and never stop coming at it there. And so the academics that claim that there's no precedence for this, and well, the plumes were right across the width, nonstop, the whole width. It was one big invisible cloud over the Pacific, North America, the Atlantic, and European countries by day 40 for sure. But it still didn't stop coming out of there. So the plume never stopped coming out. And then the biggest, heaviest particles went directly into the ocean. And then the fuel rods, they paved the whole ocean front out there, basically with cement to try to cover up the fuel rods on the ocean floor. It's catastrophic because they're burning it in the incinerators that all blows out towards the ocean. And then now they're going to put 400 more incinerators there to burn radioactive wood. And that the pollen is radioactive. That is still hemorrhaging out of these buildings. They're gone down into the earth. It's like it's truly a horror story. We can't make it up. If the media was covering it like the way I cover it, with the documentation, then the whole planet would be gone to war against these reactors. We would throw 6 million people, unfortunately, at these things because we don't have to do that at this day and age, I don't think, anymore. I think we have the technology. And like I say, I'm starting up a robotic company if I get a little break coming up as soon as I can. And I think I have solutions that will definitely change the game for any nuclear accident on the planet. But definitely, we got to stop Fukushima. We got to stop it. We got to stop using homeless. We're running out of homeless down there and immigrants, and people don't speak the language. And there's not an academic on the planet that went down in there, and they all come out and said, oh, it's like a banana and a potato chip. Every one of them. The minute they say that, you got to walk away. The minute they say that, you got to turn your back on them. The minute they say that, you got to throw your hands up in the air and say, well, shit, I can't trust anything out there. That's shocking as you keep running into that over and over and over in mainstream.
This is what I don't call, this is the thing that really dumbfounds me, that it's this reliance on this is and I guess I get it because I understand people's pursuit of academic excellence, but it's almost like you got to throw the gloves off. I mean, when are people going to start saying, you know what, it's the catastrophe that's ongoing in Fukushima is not just the nuclear radiation. It is the complete compliance with being assaulted on a daily basis and the expectations that we have to just sit down, shut up, and take it.
No corporation is going to get away with killing the Pacific Ocean and everything else that gets killed. Right? Like that's not human spirit. That's not just planet the way the majority of people feels, or anybody really truly outside of the industry still feels. And that these people, just because they maintain the bigger positions in their narrative for getting all the traction, that doesn't mean that's going to last much longer. They're being wrecked right now everywhere they go. If they open their mouth now and say potassium 40 or bananas, they're usually assaulted themselves in the comments section or everywhere else. That is a changing of the guard we've never seen before. But we got an extinction event, and we can't hide that. We can't turn that off. We can't stop it, and we can't bring it back. Even if we stop the reactors, we'll never get the Pacific Ocean back. And most people don't understand what I'm saying when I'm saying that. They can't even begin to imagine. But I have 14,000 hours under the ocean, and I can assure you it was worth fighting for, and it's worth fighting for just to stop Fukushima's reactors, because look at the supercell storms that have been raging now for almost 6 years. 230 mile an hour is getting to be an average. We've never even, if you had a wind warning for your area, 230 mile an hour gusting 260, 270 miles per hour, not kilometers, but miles per hour, you would freak out. Now, these people that it happened to have never had that happen to them before. And these people don't feel like, a lot of these people don't want to rebuild because they don't see any sense in it if they're going to have another storm like that. What was the sense, right? They've never seen nothing like that before. But, I mean, my goodness, the implications then now, if you look, you'll see a drop in the oxygen over the last 6 years around this planet. And then you'll see a drop, a total destruction of the industries depending upon the ocean. And there's only the bigger species that are hanging on. But you see last year there's 48 whales died off the coastline of Canada. They all starved to death. Normally there's only 80 a year. We've seen the sardines, the herring, the anchovies, the squid, everything.
The animal deaths are not even, I think I'm one of the few people who even discusses the animal deaths. I mean, today, 100 plus seabirds found off of Peru, thousands of fish die in Vietnam, 1,000 ducks plus in India, hundreds of dead seabirds in Chile. I mean, massive,
so like even
10,000 tons of fish in Colombia.
Like if you go back pre-Fukushima, we reported on deaths of 15. That was considered a die-off, strange die-off. Last year, or the beginning of earlier this year, in Alaska, all the way down into Canada, there was 500,000 birds estimated to die, starved to death. And a glass of water would have 1 billion creatures in it, little microscopic creatures. They didn't find that in their tracks.
You know what's really sad?
That's
a lot of
frightening.
these animals are going to the southern hemisphere, and just dying off the coast of Peru and Brazil. I mean,
they're running out of food. They're looking for food.
22 sea lions was found in Peru, 30 sea lions and dolphins in Peru. Again, this is all just this last month. I mean, the mass animal deaths is just unbelievable. 60 tons of dead fish in Vietnam. 60 tons. That's one event. This is the thing that we just can't comprehend. Like, people do not. I read an article the other day that said by 2035, I think they said 65%. I might be quoting it, or some huge number. 65% of all the animals on the planet will be dead, be extinct.
Well, the northern hemisphere is done. I got maps where they're saying the animals are all going to migrate towards the north, right? And it's all the way from Mexico, all America, and all of Canada. The animals are going to migrate off the coastline and out of the country and all the way up north looking for food. But they also talk about stuff like moose and stuff like that. But moose eats twigs, the buds off the ends of trees and stuff like that. Why would, the trees are not gone. So why would the moose disappear, for instance? Why did the caribou die off dramatically over the last couple of years? The herds and that. Et cetera, et cetera. We had 10,000 sea lions off California washed up, baby sea lions. They starved to death. Their stomachs were full of naked rocks. Well, normally they come ashore and they would eat some of the 6,500 species that inhabit the tidal pools at low tide, or they could have dived down because it's shallow water, and they could have ate to their heart's content. But they came ashore, their parents couldn't find anything for them. The krill, which is their major food, and anchovies and everything were missing, and sardines.
Well, that's all dead. It's all off the coast, even on the coast of Oregon. I was talking to Tim Martin yesterday. He's a fisherman who's selling. He's showing me pictures of himself with salmon. He's been a salmon fisher. He's 55 all of his life. He is heartbroken. He has lost all of his fishing friends because they don't want to hear about Fukushima. They don't want to hear about it, and they keep going out there and coming back with no fish. He was out on the coast, and it's sad. He's really mourning probably what you are doing, Dana, because you're a man of the ocean yourself, of the man of the coast.
Oh, it was rough.
He's mourning. He goes out there all the time, and he called me yesterday and said, I went out there just to go look again, and he ran into some fisheries guys who were picking up dead salmon. Like, there was a die-off, and they were trying to pick them up and counting them, and he started talking to these two men who worked for the fisheries department. He said neither one of them knew about Fukushima. They had heard about it several years ago, but and when he started talking to them, they pulled out their cell phones. And they were fact-checking just the little bits that he knows as a citizen, just talking to them. And he said, man, Lonnie, you should see their ears perked up. He goes, at first they were really skeptical. But then as I was talking to him, they began to realize, maybe he's right. Maybe this is why the salmon are dying.
No, most people don't know. Most people don't
And
know, and I see that a lot.
institutionally, the people working for the institutions are not even like it's. You're not even really allowed to discuss it. There's no. He said there was no discussion of it whatsoever.
I had Coast Guard come up here to me in town where I got a Coast Guard Zodiac with a aluminum cabin on it, and I was parked behind their spot. That's the berth that I was given down there. And anyway, I was there for a few days. I was getting ready to take off up north, up to Alaska, and I went down on it was a nice night. I went down just to check on the boat, and a couple of Coast Guard come up to me, shook my hand, said they seen my boat there a couple of days ago. They went all over my
Hey,
site. And
Dana,
then,
I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to try to add this call. Let's see if it'll work.
yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Dana, it's Lonnie. Did you hear us? Hello? Oh, man.
Yeah,
I don't
no,
think.
no, I never heard you. No, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It looked like I had hung up on you guys. Wow, that was Dave Parrish calling in.
Hi,
Dave,
Dave.
if you're there, try to call again. If you can hear us, try to call again and we'll give it a second stab. Or maybe what I can do is look at the phone call and just maybe call you in so you can get in. Let me
Yeah,
see if I can
routine. Yeah.
dial. Yeah, let me see if I can be clever about this one. How about that?
But anyway, I'll finish off that last sentence. Was that
Good idea.
Coast Guard had went out on their boat the next day and the day after, and had looked themselves, and they had said to me that it was so obvious when they went and looked when they understood what they were supposed to look for because they took it they didn't understand, right? They didn't get Fukushima, didn't know about it. And they went and had a look themselves. And so they came up, shook my hand, and told me they appreciated everything I was doing. I had that happen to me a number of times from Coast Guard, Fisheries and Oceans, and the police along the coastline come up, shook my hand.
Wow.
So I'm just saying these people didn't know, and then
Yeah,
became
that is
aware.
exactly right.
And
Let me see if we can get
go ahead.
Dave Parrish on the line. I think I got his phone number. I
You
think
reached
that was
Dave
him.
at 623-810-180.
Let me see if we can do it this way. Dave, I have to give you a call because it says if I answer this call, it'll put you on. It says it won't. Will not do it. So I can evidently for something. I'm going to have Walt take a look at this. Evidently, I can call out, but I cannot accept the call. It will put the call on hold.
Oh yeah.
So we got to figure that one out. I'm going to redial Dave again because he's evidently. I would love to have him on with us because Dave does the Fuku Fridays.
Right. Yeah. That's
And
right.
I always think that I'm going to be able to do that, and then I never can get through. I'm always too busy on the Friday because he holds it like sort of in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
So
No worries.
let me see if I can. So let's continue. I'm going to send him a little text and tell him that why don't you talk for a minute, Dana, complete your thought, and I'll send him a little text, and we'll see if we can join him in.
Well, most people don't know much about Osama bin Laden, or know a lot about Osama bin Laden. They know a lot about Hussein Mubarak. They know a lot about Gaddafi when he died. They know lots about Prince Williams when he got married. They know lots and lots about Steve Jobs because you couldn't get away from it. The English riots. They know about Kim Jong-il and all that stuff. And they know about the crisis in Greece. They know about Murdoch phone hacking scandal. And they all happened in 2011. But most people don't know jack about Fukushima. And what they do know is, meltdown. And then that's it. It seems like their brain goes into sleep mode because you're not talking about
Right.
something that was highly recited. Like they talk about North Korea and Kim Jong, and they talk about Gaddafi. He's brought up all the time. Rupert Murdoch gets. Prince Williams is always out there on websites and pictures and everything else. So all of these connotations are always there, but Fukushima, no. And then the ones that do talk about Fukushima are disgusting, pathetic, demented, twisted, heartless, soulless, spineless worms for the nuclear industry. And we're polluted with their narrative, with their disgusting diatribe, with their disingenuous ad hominem
Yeah.
That is, where they claim
The
anybody.
nonstop liars.
Is it fear mongering to talk about Kim Jong Il? Was it fear mongering to talk about Gaddafi? Was it fear mongering? Blah blah blah. No, it was okay for them. It's okay for them when they talk about anything. That's not fear mongering. That's just talking. But if we come out and say, "Hey, you weren't honest. You were deceptive and deceitful and disingenuous," then everybody la 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 with their fingers in their ears and their eyes closed. Um, it's not their fault. It's a trigger reflex for people in one sense because they're inundated with so much other stuff, and it seems
The
important.
person you have dialed can't take.
Seems important, like the lecture. I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's the Skype thing.
Yeah.
Since the phone calls seem to mess up the whole Skype thing here now on my end. So sorry about that, folks.
That's okay. Yeah, on my side. And so Fukushima, you got 4 reactors for sure, but you maybe got 15. You probably got at least 10 that the Fukushima governor strongly demanded that they decommission, and that each of these buildings would have been in the same basic configuration with all the reactor cores stored in them or around them. And then there's around 9 million pounds in the common spent fuel pool on the ground, not counting all the drums and barrels and everything else they got on the site. We know a lot of it was washed directly out into the ocean. And these numbers that we're talking about, just one building is crazy. But that 400 kilometers of the coastline that was devastated by a wood chipper or tsunami, a steel chipper or a cement chipper, it completely, it went up to 10 kilometers inland. And so all the nuclear holding sites in that 400 kilometers, because these nuclear power plants have been around for about 40 years. They have to change the fuel every 12 months to 18 months. So there was an enormous amount of waste that they produced at the same time, enormous amount of yellow cake, enormous amount of weapons,
right.
Triggers and stuff like this that they would have, the material. Very, very...
it's everywhere. I mean, this is the thing. Just look at that explosion. Hey, let me try to call Dave again. I see his line is not busy again, so let me see if I can successfully get him on with us. How about that? That might work. And we might get his answering machine. If we do, I'll hang up right away. But that might.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm going to see if we can actually get him. It seems to be ringing, so we'll see. It'd be nice to have Dave input on the show because he's out there every single Friday, bringing information to people who are otherwise not paying attention.
Oh, yeah, no.
Hi, Lonnie.
Hey, Dave. Thank you for joining us. I got clever and figured out a way to call you. So welcome to the show.
My pleasure. I'm so glad to join you guys this morning.
Well,
hi, Dave.
Hey, how's it going, Dana?
Good, thank you. Thank you for doing what you're doing, my friend.
I'm such a huge, huge supporter of yours, Dana. You're doing such awesome work.
Thank
I know
you.
You're getting railroaded by the Canadian authorities, but I want you to understand that everybody around the world, all the Fuku fighters are behind you, and we support you, and we love you, and we want you to keep going doing what you do.
Yeah, I feel that all the time too, Dave. Thank you. And it helps big, right, for me to be able to do the things I'm trying to do. And, we're making headway.
Yeah.
But
now, I got a question for you, Dana. Have you read the new article that came out this week on Phys.org about the sea star wasting disease in the Salish Sea?
No.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
That was a big story. That was like that huge, what they were called the sailor starfish. They're a big, huge die-off there.
Yeah.
I'll look it up right now. But,
massive die-off. It's the mass die-off of sunflower starfish along the British Columbia coast on October 25th. That's the date.
Right. When I read this article yesterday, I was like, gee, it's funny how the mainstream media will validate what these guys are saying, but will not validate what Dana's been doing. That
Right.
just seems absolutely ludicrous to me.
Well, they call it a virus. They're not talking about radiation. The reason,
Non-specific virus, right.
look, this is the reason that Dana has been ostracized by the scientific community, because he is saying the R word. We are saying it's radioactive contamination is killing everybody, and that is just so catastrophic that people can handle a virus, because if you have a virus, you can get an antibody, and maybe we could fix it. or it's nature taking its course.
When they had Ebola, they took pictures. They didn't know what it was. They took pictures of the virus and the pathogens, and then they released them. And then scientists out there, some of them recognized it. Well, they didn't do that for starfish. They didn't do that for any other species, did they?
Yeah,
right?
Well,
because they didn't have a virus or a pathogen. But that's what they alleged. Yeah.
This article says the West Coast is renowned for its 28 varieties of starfish, some not found anywhere else in the world. In 2013, divers and researchers started noticing the starfish were dying from a disease that experts couldn't figure out. 3 years later, they believe a virus is at fault, but there may be also other factors such as water temperature. Really, not one word of Fukushima in this article. Not one word of radioactive contamination.
But all you have to do is look at Dana's videos and see the real evidence. That's
right.
the beauty. All of his hard work, it's right there, right?
That's
so, for these, so-called experts and scientists to say, "Oh, we don't know," they look like idiots. They look, they're just putting egg on their face and making Dana look like the genius.
Well, Dave, this is the thing. They're not allowed to say that it's radiation or they get fired. They are not even allowed to talk about it. One little whiff of it and you are terminated immediately. That's
not
the
just
issue.
Get fired, Lonnie, but they lose their funding. That's the real crime, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Well, if you have a scientist that stands out, then everybody else can start to speak up. Those who are holding their voices, right? And so that's usually the way it goes anyway. A patriot is scared and scorned, feared and scorned, but when he's cause succeeded, costs little to join, right? And people do. But that is the way of the world, and we've always seen that. And there's always somebody that will come out and they're the what do you call it? The firebrand, so to speak. They labeled me that, unfortunately, but as a nuclear firebrand. Not a very nice article about me, but the nuclear firebrand is not what I wanted to be, or not who I am, or anything like that. I'm talking about an extinction event. I'm talking about an event that has affected the other 8 million species on the planet. It happens to be nuclear. I'm not somebody. I have rallied against nuclear long before Fukushima. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, and it's documented well. But this concern of mine is that we've just lost 4 million species, and that there's no end in sight, and that it's spilt over into the insect world, where we went from 30,000 species to around 30, and then to the animal kingdom. And we have a wide variety of animals here in British Columbia, Canada, and the majority of them are actually missing. And I should really come out and do a video about that and show off all these species. It was an incredible amount of diversity, but I know it well anyway from my history. And now it's gone. And I went in all these little tiny villages all over the coastline, one end of Canada right to the other end in British Columbia, 15,000 miles total. And I talked to these people. And when I asked these people, did they notice a change? They said, change. And literally almost blamed me for it. They were so upset that everything was missing, but not able to wrap their mind around it.
Well, this is the reality, because really, as humans, we really only care about the survival of one species, and that's our own. So what is the disconnect here is that we need all these other millions of species to create a friendly environment, because as a species, we're a very weak species. We don't have the wherewithal to survive without the help of other animals.
Well, right, we're almost living on Mars right now, yeah.
And it's incomprehensible that people are just refusing to discuss it. It's
terrifying. It's terrifying, right? It's horrifying.
So, Dave, what is your reaction when people on your site? Why don't you tell people what you provide? Because you do this every single week.
Sure. Yeah. What we're just trying to do is raise awareness. Like everybody else. When this all started, I was like everybody else. I had no idea how nuclear energy worked or anything like that, but, I just educated myself along the way and said, well, more people are going to need this kind of education because, like I said, when I started, I had no idea. How can you know what to fight against if you don't know at all what you're fighting in the first place, right? So, all I've done is, over the past 5 years is compiled all the information that I could online, try to keep it in places where people could get at it freely and easily and see for themselves, do their own research, find out what's going on and what better ways they can take care of themselves, take care of the people around them.
Right, and you don't have to know anything, really. You can learn it pretty quick, but it's a real event, and it's worthy of anybody picking up the pieces and doing their own part. But that is how normally any kind of movement will win, when everybody's talking about it, when everybody knows a little bit about it and something, accurate. And so as long as people like me and you and Lonnie and many, 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 many others that are trying their best, keep speaking out and using our voices, there's no way they can win that battle. But we've lost the battle already for Earth, right? And we got to sustain whatever's left and whatever we can find. And there are people out there doing that. There are people out there collecting whatever species is left here in British Columbia and building saltwater habitats and trying to preserve them, because they understand that actually really truly is going on right now. And they're spending millions of dollars to try to accomplish that. Look, France just got, what was it, 19 reactors are shut down now in the last little tiny bit, and 7 more are slated to go down.
Right.
That's staggering. They're not going to put them back online. They know. They're like, the industry is trying to survive, and so it's posturing all the time, but they got nowhere to put all the waste to create all kinds of new nuclear power plants. It's just posturing, because ultimately we're going to win the battle, because the Death of the Pacific can be hid for a few years, but not forever, and forever is right here, right now.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, that's what Mimi Gurman says, is the nuclear industry built around the way the system is built. It's called, they actually have a terminology called zero extrication, meaning you can't get out, I can't get out. None of us, we're all interconnected. That's why all these nuclear industry companies are all sort of interconnected. Nobody can get out, so they have to keep pumping each other up. That's why they're going, kicking and screaming. The reality is they have to get out. And even after they get out, guess what? They're not done forever. We have to maintain these sites in perpetuity until every single animal on this planet is dead from nuclear pollution. I mean, from radioactive pollution. It's insanity. It really is, like what I discussed earlier when you were discussing this earlier. It seemed to me that the batterer has just like pulled the bullet, killed his kids, killed his wife, and just shot himself.
Very well might be more isotopes in the environment than carbon.
Wow.
I'm
not making that up. Go ahead, Dave.
Now we got to protect the next generation, because one of those genius kids is going to find a solution for us.
That's right.
Well, so we got to keep them alive long enough to help.
That's right. Thank you, Dave.
That's right. That's why we speak out, because we're not death and doomers. We believe that there's a solution, but we can't find the solution until we talk about the real situation. We're not going to find the solution.
Till you admit you got a problem, yeah.
And
you
protect people from harming themselves, and protect the animals instead of just letting everybody get ransacked. We need to actually put up protective actions. We don't need to be having the Olympics in 2020. We need to be shutting down the Olympics and having an emergency issue of, oh my God, this is a catastrophic event.
When I done the coastline, I didn't expect to find an extinction event. And I done the whole coastline before I accepted that, and it's still hard. I looked for an oasis
video
everywhere.
was the most shocking. I will never forget that.
Yeah.
That was your face, your voice.
9 days.
The grief that you had your first expedition was so evident, Dana. It really was compelling. Yeah. I mean, those are the ones that, if I were you, I would, because really, you can tell you had experience on the ocean just by the way you managed yourself and handled yourself. Yeah. But your face,
I was heartbroken. Still am.
Yeah. Like when I speak to Tim Martin is just completely heartbroken over and his friends all still eat salmon. They think he's crazy. They make fun of him. They ridicule him because he won't eat. He won't. What they do is they get the salmon and they cut the cancer out. Yeah,
I'm just going to cut you off because we're at the end of the show, Dave. I just want to remind everybody I'm doing a lecture in this town. And so I have to face all these people in this town. And that, I have an hour question and answer period after so I can console them. because I understand what I'm doing and what I'm saying to them and what a lot of their emotions are going to be, and that just a 1 hour lecture is not going to be enough for them. And that is something I don't want to do. That is something I don't look forward to at all. But I have worked tirelessly to get to this point. But it's something I will never get used to, I'm sure, and something I will never like doing. But it is not something that I want to do. So why am I doing it? Because I have to do it, and I don't know why. But that has to be done, and I have to be that person, whether I like it or not. I got to gut up, and I got to take whatever comes my way because of it. But that is. There is nothing else I would do. That is what I should do and should have done and have to do, or I won't be able to live with myself if I don't come out and tell people. But that is also how and I've learned a lot in the last couple of weeks about that. But that is how, because of advertisement in newspapers and advertisement going out and all to the homes and everything else. My picture's on these advertisements, of course.
Is it on the Nuclear Proctologist website?
This one, no. I didn't put it up at all.
So before we end, I'd like both of you to give your contact sites. Like, Dave, why don't you let people know where to find you and what your activities is? And then Dana, when he's done, why don't you give us the information where people can connect and find with you?
Sure, yeah, let's see. You can just find us anywhere on social media. Operation Save the Earth is available on that.
It's called Operation Save the Earth.
Yep, OperationSaveTheEarth.com is our website. If you go on Facebook, we're there. On Twitter, we're there. On Google Plus, we're there. On Stumble Upon, we have the Stumble Upon science page. Everything you need is right there to read and get caught up on what's going on.
Okay, and that is Operation Save the Earth. Thank you, Dave, for speaking with us and calling in. And sorry it took me a little while to connect with you, but
it worked. It was awesome.
No, it's my pleasure.
You, Dave.
Guys.
I think we lost him. That was pretty quick. Are you there?
Yeah,
Dave?
jumped
Go
on
ahead.
it.
Well, we have about 2 minutes left, Dana. Why don't you tell people how to find you and what's a good way to get in touch with you?
The nuclearproctologist.org, and there's a really good video at the top of the page when you get there. It's a 1 hour presentation, but a really nice one. And Beautiful Girl by Dana is linked over from there as my YouTube channel, where I put up recent presentations regularly. And that the new company is the Nuclear Proctologist Productions Limited, and that'll be coming out with my documentary soon enough. And also, you'll see films showing up at the Nuclear Proctologist in the next few weeks and other paraphernalia about Nuclear Proctologist. But that's to fund these operations. We do want to raise enough coming up in the near future through these lectures to videotape, live stream the whole coastline. And I'll end it on that because it won't shut up.
That's really awesome. Well, I do want to tell people, we have about a minute left. I do want to tell people I am planning a November 5th protest. It comes from the V for Vendetta movie, Remember the 5th of November. It's kind of, and I'm calling my protest Stand Up for the Planet. I'm going to be here in Eugene, Oregon at the new federal building. I really encourage everybody on November 5th in your own little town, do your own Stand Up for the Planet protest. We need pockets of people everywhere protesting and pushing back against the machine that is literally murdering us and murdering our children. For our children, we need to speak out, and we need to get millions and millions of people out in the street to stop this insanity.
And that's what it'll take, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, until we get millions of people in the street, they're going to just keep rolling us over. So I feel very strongly about this. So I'm going to talk about it again next week because it'll be the day before the protest. But I thank you, Dave, for calling in. Thank you, Dana Durnford, for joining us. And thank you to my listeners who continue to listen to this information, take it to heart, and use the information to figure out how you can affect the change. Get yourselves out on the street. Do your own stand-up for the Planet protest on November 5th. Join us on Monday. Put your courage feet on. Talk to you guys soon.